All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. We're recording during Sunday Night Football. Sam Laporta looking stunningly healthy, just scored a touchdown in the second quarter, so we won't be able to talk about the outcome of that game as we do not know what it is, but we will talk about the results of the games we do know. We'll talk Packers-49ers and that opening line at 9.5, and then we'll talk Steelers-Bills and Eagles-Bucs, the two Monday games. But Drew, how are you? How was your weekend? How did you enjoy the games?
Oh man, the first three games that are in the books and the ones that we can comment on, they were all just full heart. Loved everything we had so far. Although I will say, and you know, right on the heels of your Sam Laporta comment, a special thanks for nothing to the news and information people this week on the injuries front, and like just in general, like telling us about what was going on with discussions behind the scenes about the Bills playing on this morning. Like there was a lot of people just not doing their job this week and, you know, just gushing over coaching changes that are immaterial for the playoffs. So that was somewhat frustrating. That said, the results of yesterday's games were huge. I'm sorry that your Dolphins play didn't get home, but I feel like you know don't bet on a team wearing teal in January, Jay. But
to be fair, Drew, the bet did lose, but to be fair, it should have lost by a lot more. They didn't deserve to.
That's a great point.
Kansas City.
That's a great point. Great point by you. Second half under, I played pretty aggressively, and that was a lovely way to pad the night last night. I guess the story of the weekend really is just that CJ Stroud is here. Like he's arrived. Jordan Love, by the way, also he is here. He has arrived. Like the fact that we have young quarterbacks who have stepped into the crucible of playoff pressure and absolutely delivered is awesome. It is awesome. And I think there is probably going to be a potential for a little overreaction this week, maybe with people being a little excited about how well these young quarterbacks are performing, as it is probable that CJ Stroud heads to Baltimore, and it's certain that Jordan Love heads to San Francisco, and they, will have to play teams that had true blue buys. But just the fact that they can comport themselves as effective quarterbacks in a playoff environment is a huge breath of fresh air. Honestly, the fact that Bobby Slowick learned from the final Week 18 game and was like, you know what? Let's be a little more aggressive. Oh, this is really effective. No kidding, Bobby. We were all screaming about this in game as you were, close to fumbling that game against the Colts. So, it was a wild one. A lot of people kind of were, I thought, a little unfair to Flacco, who was very competent in that game and very competent in his whole, stretch as a Browns quarterback. But, single elimination and one quarter of a couple of fluky interceptions that results in points for the other team. And the next thing you're back on the trash pile. But yesterday's games were fun. I thought Mahomes was perfectly fine. I thought the Chiefs' defense was probably the story more so than anything that the Dolphins failed to bring to that game. Surely we have a really, really interesting second round of these playoffs shaping up. But we need to know more information before we can really handicap this, right?
Yeah. Well, firstly on Joe Flacco, I won't stand for any defense of Joe Flacco after I've had to, for 5 weeks, have Flacco comeback player of the year shoveled down my throat. So there was a bit of schadenfreude yesterday as Flacco finally revealed himself, which he had revealed it all along. He'd been doing this all season long. He was magnificent to open the game, and then he threw the picks, and that's what he's been doing all season. He's really high variance. And he ends the year as PFF's 22nd quarterback out of 42 ranked QBs. And that's exactly what he was the whole time. He got on a hot streak and achieved averageness, even though there was nothing about his individual plays that were average. It was either 100th percentile or 0th percentile. But that was, I was waiting for that, and it finally arrived. To me, the two biggest things I'll take away from the weekend were what happened to Cleveland and Dallas's defenses.
Sure.
Where Cleveland, I think it always stuck with me how easily Trevor Siemian marched the ball down the field on that first drive.
Great call.
Football, right? Where they just there was no opposition whatsoever. It's like, what? Isn't this supposed to be a historically great pass defense? And Trevor Siemian's just doing whatever he wants with no offensive line and one receiver. And I think that what probably happened with Cleveland's defense is that they just reached the point of no return with their injuries. It's just we didn't realize it because the teams they were playing down the stretch were a completely broken Jags unit with Trevor Lawrence super banged up. The Bears, who can hit and miss on offense, as they showed, putting up 9 points against the Packers in Week 18. And then they played Case Keenum and Trevor Siemian. And then they sat there, guys. So I didn't think we ever really got the true reveal of the Cleveland defense until Saturday against Houston, where Stroud was magnificent and completely lit them up. And then this Cowboys defense, I can't remember a team ever in any sport that has such a stark differential between how they play against good teams and how they play against bad teams. I guess in a way that makes sense for their defense, because we've talked about it all year. The defense it's basically, if Parsons and Lawrence don't get home, it's extremely vulnerable. And if they do get home, then it's incredible because they're incredible. And they have these pick merchants on the outside like Deron Bland who feast on it. But if they're not getting quick pressure, and they weren't getting quick pressure against Jordan Love today, and even when they were, he was so good that it didn't matter, then they were super exposed. I mean, this Dallas team, they lost by 32 points to San Francisco. They lost by 21 points against Buffalo. They were losing this game by like 30 at one point. And outside of that, they just beat everyone else like 35-7. And I can't remember a team like this.
I mean, God, man, how many weeks ago was it we kind of characterized them? They're front running bullies.
Yeah.
They can't take a punch. They can't, kind of get back up after, somebody really gives it to them. I mean, the Buffalo game, I think, was probably in hindsight, like the reason that I was fairly confident that the Packers were alive in this one, because it's like, hey, if even at home, like these guys are down a little bit, are they going to be able to get off the mat? We'll see. They scored plenty of garbage time points, I guess, and that's going to be your highest total game of the week. It was a very, very disappointing effort from the Cowboys. And I think it kind of illustrates just sort of, that's who they were. And actually, like, if we really want to break it down, like, I think it's weird competing thoughts here. So bear with me.
Unpack them.
The Green Bay Packers are freaking live against the Niners. They are. Like, the Green Bay Packers offense they're cooking, man. Matt LaFleur knew what was asked of him today, and he came he showed up for the test with the answers, and he freaking delivered, and it was awesome to see it play out. He had a healthy lead against a team that is capable of explosive plays, and he never took his foot off the gas. And it was very, very refreshing because so many coaches literally let a team back in. And the Cowboys, like, if they hadn't kept their foot on the gas, the Cowboys were coming back, man. Like, as you can see, like 32 points wasn't going to be enough. Like that they needed to continue to score. So it was very refreshing to see that. And I just think they're coming into their own as a young group, and they have amazing pass protection. So it's not crazy that they're going to be able to score points on this Niners team. And if they're playing with a positive game state, who knows? The Packers defense was maybe the surprise of that game, which is just to say that Joe Barry and company are very untrustworthy, and like the Niners might ultimately just knife them to death every which way, because they are schemable against, and for whatever reason McCarthy didn't have the answers today. In part I'm like, man, this Packers team, like you don't want to play them right now. Like their offense is capable of scoring 48 as they just did, and they could have scored more if they had really had to. They could have been worse. But the other side of the coin is, well, now Dallas is out. So that should be a good thing for San Francisco, who is relatively full strength here and, does have this week of rest to prepare. So, technically we are looking at Niners probably walking it in the NFC, probably. But in the back of my head, I feel like you remember, what was it? 2 years ago? the Green Bay Packers were in this exact position where they were at home this week. They had a week of rest, and the Niners take care of business in Dallas and then came to Green Bay. I will never forget. I was very sure in that game, like, Niners are drawing dead. Matt LaFleur was sure in that game because he came out of halftime after having a miserable first half offensive performance and said, yeah, we don't need any adjustments. And so, like, ultimately, like, that loss was really kind of, well, you got to stand up and take notice. Like, there is something to be said about, a wild card team that's playing with confidence and playing with house money. And that's where the Packers are right now. And it would be amazing if this is sort of a little bit of a, universal karmic answer if they go into San Francisco and knock out a Niners team that's significantly better than them. But just maybe hasn't, we haven't seen the Niners play very well in a while, Jay. It's been a while.
Here's my problem with the Packers, and a couple of things. One, in the past 5 weeks, or 5 games coming into this game, yes, they blew out the Vikings with Jaron Hall just not being ready for the moment, and then they beat the Bears, who had effectively nothing to play for in Week 18.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't forgotten about the 3 weeks before that, where they lost to Tommy Cutlets. They lost to Tommy Cutlets in primetime in a game they really needed to win. They got blown out at home by a Bucs team that really isn't that good, and Baker Mayfield had a perfect passer rating. And then you know what they did the next week? The next week they gave up 30 to Carolina, and Carolina didn't score for the rest of the season. There were 2 more games after. Carolina did not score for the rest of the season after that Packers game. And yes, they got out of that 33-30. I just think I believe in the Green Bay offense, and I believe in Jordan Love and the O-line. I think this defense is terrible. And I think that Dak, our friend on Twitter, NFL Pinnacle Beater, he had a great tweet where he was effectively said, if we're going to study the idea of choking as a real phenomena, it has to start with Dak Prescott, because it's insane at this point. I don't know what he was saying. He could have thrown multiple more picks today.
You don't start with Dak Prescott. You start with Peyton Manning. Well, Peyton Manning was a generational talent, and like specifically, like, what was it, 41-0 loss to the Jets? People don't remember this sort of stuff, but like, you go far enough back in the Peyton Manning playoff catalog, there are some greatest hits that are real wild, real lows, and like the playoff crucible treats different quarterbacks differently, and it does not treat Dak Prescott well. Some of that, I'm sure, is the fact that he is in Dallas. This is mega, it's a pressure that doesn't exist for any other quarterback. People will say that this week, probably making excuses for him, but the fact that he couldn't get it going against the Green Bay defense was amazing. And honestly, Green Bay capitalized on 2 interceptions that really swung the game. But like, you were watching, like, 5, there was like 5 truly interceptable passes that Dak Prescott threw in this one that were like, he's not making those passes in the regular season week 13. He's not. Like, it was something about the spot and the pressure of the moment that really, got to him to perform that poorly, I thought. And same with Mike McCarthy. Like, he's not a guy that is necessarily going to bring you your A game when it's like the pressure is, absolutely on the line. Mike McCarthy had an NFC Championship game 1 in Seattle and managed to bottle it with wild special teams and 2-point conversion defense. So we've seen crazier losses from McCarthy since at this point, but no, I think ultimately the pressure of the playoffs is, everybody responds differently. Dak does not respond well. You can do whatever you want with that information.
It's different with Peyton. It's funny too, because Peyton kind of gets a pass because he did it in 2006, where he came back from 21-3 down against the Pats, and he beat Brady in the AFC title game, and then he beat Rex Grossman in the Super Bowl. That New England team, their number 1 wide receiver was like Rashae Caldwell. And I think the number 2 might have been like a 35-year-old Troy Brown. Like, the team had nothing. And the fact that they were down 21-3 in the first place wasn't ideal. But then he fixes his legacy and then throws a pick 6 in the Super Bowl against New Orleans.
Let's pivot back to look forward. And I got to ask you a key question, because you're a Niners guy. I know you feel it, that this is a year for them. All right. Okay. So kind of synthesizing all this, right? If the Packers lose and the Cowboys move on and host the matchup presumably between the 2-3, right? I mean, we don't know how this game between the Rams and Lions are going to end, but the Rams offense is doing whatever they want to this point in the contest. So tough for me to see how the Rams defense adjusts, but we'll see. Let's just assume though that like if you are the Niners, who do you want? Do you want a team with a fatal flaw like the Packers defense, even though that comes with a team that has an offense that has a ceiling that might be good enough to put you in harm's way? Or would you rather have the winner of the 4-5, which is a team that maybe doesn't belong in the playoffs that limps into San Francisco, right? Like this was kind of a bad outcome for the Niners, wasn't it?
I don't know. I think Dallas was still probably the best team, and I'm not sure Dak plays that way every time. I mean, I think they were the second best team, and now the conference is. It looks much less imposing. If the Rams win this game, then the NFC, there is a chance the NFC will go through Baker Mayfield. Yeah. The NFC will go through Baker Mayfield.
That's true.
They could have three home games, which is pretty.
Yeah, we could have a 6 seed host the NFC Championship game. It's not crazy. It is not crazy.
Yep. Shades of what was it? Arizona, the year that they made it, and they played Philly, and that was like a 5-6 back in like 08 or 09, whenever the Santonio Holmes catch was in the Super Bowl. Let's jump into Packers-Niners, where I agree it's a little bit scary for San Francisco, just because I think it's a match of two extremely high variance quarterbacks in Brock Purdy and Jordan Love. And when you're a 1 seed going up against a 7 seed and you're a 9.5 now trending towards a 10-point favorite, you probably don't want that type of variance. You probably want something a little bit more predictable. At the same time, though, I suspect this probably will get to 10 just because of the Green Bay defense and of what Green Bay have served up in the past 5 weeks, notwithstanding that they were magnificent today. I don't know what happened to the Dallas defense. I mean, Green Bay I don't think they punted in the meaningful portion of the game. Dallas just weren't there on the field. But it sounds like you're leaning Green Bay at this point.
Well, at the current price, yes. I think this should be 7 flat, honestly. So if you're going to give me over 7.5, I'm in on Green Bay. I think the ceiling of their offense is enough for me to get involved, even though, for every reason, we've kind of correctly characterized San Francisco as a very, 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 worthy 1 seed and tough out. I had a weird thought about the MVP race. That's a little bit, obviously, it's of no impact because the votes are in, number one, and we know Purdy is not winning. But like, isn't it kind of better if your quarterback's just going to have his stinkers and he just kind of clusters it, right? Like, if you're going to have a bad game in the regular season, isn't it? You might as well just get it all done in one game. And if it's against, if it happens to be against the Bengals or the Ravens and they're out of conference, then that's kind of good. Like it's weirdly incongruous that his bad game on Christmas that was so highly profiled and, came at the hands of the Ravens was enough to cost him the award. But the fact of the matter is he still ends the season in terms of all quarterbacks this year as the most productive in total EPA, historic levels in terms of EPA per game. Now he gets to go up against, a Joe Barry defense that's going to be potentially without Jair Alexander. I didn't see him come back into the game. I'm guessing that wasn't precautionary, but just he really couldn't play. He went down obviously with a little bit of extreme prejudice, I would say. So somewhat consequential potential injury there. I think this total is probably a hair low as well, considering you have a Niners offense that I think is going to be able to call their number. And really the cover and, the outcome comes down to what does Green Bay do in terms of answer? And for what it's worth, I think we're going to see a pretty competitive effort from the Pack.
Yeah, I think with Purdy, there's been some interesting narratives about that game against Baltimore where, his own coach gave him a pass for 3 of the interceptions. Like, he was terrible in that game. I know 3 of the interceptions were tipped. He could have thrown 3 others that weren't tipped. The first interception, which was entirely on him, to Kyle Hamilton, that was atrocious and changed the whole complexion of the game. So I mean, it's a little bit concerning that Purdy, in his last big game, which, by the way, for him was 2 games ago, that he looked like Dak Prescott did against Green Bay.
Yeah.
And also another kind of interesting wrinkle is that Greg Olson on the broadcast, who I thought was fantastic, he was kind of giving Dak a bit more of a pass than you would expect, saying like, these guys aren't open. Like, no one's open at the moment.
Yeah.
What's he supposed to do? First read isn't open, second read isn't open. So maybe there is something to this Green Bay defense that hasn't surfaced all season, but now miraculously has. I think Jair Alexander, I don't think it was that bad, just the mechanic of the injury. I know he was already injured, but I mean, he was walking around, so it didn't look like he wasn't carted off or anything, but that'll be a big element of that game. Okay. Before we get to Steelers-Bills, another chapter in one of the most storied rivalries in college basketball will be written Tuesday night. Purdue takes on Indiana. In Who's Your Territory, you can only see it on Peacock. Find out if the Boilermakers can boost their chances at reclaiming the #1 spot in the country, live at 6:30 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
Puka Nacua is trying to reopen Offensive Rookie of the Year voting. And Dan Campbell punted, which he should have because it was 4th and 10, but always kind of
4th and 10
makes you feel like something's wrong in the world when you see Detroit punting the ball. Anyway, I think we might see some punting in this next game. Steelers-Bills. The line is Bills -10. The total originally feels like a lifetime ago. What opened at, I think, 43.5 and then got down all the way to mid to low 30s. And now it's back up to 38.5 with the rescheduled game. Do you think there's any angle into this one?
Yeah, sad we didn't get to play the Snover today, but that's okay. I look, man, the conditions in Buffalo were and are like massively problematic. I don't know how you get 80,000 people to and from a stadium in that sort of condition. So dome or open stadium, and the whole comments, weird internet commentary about the toughness of the play. Like, it's all of it was like, this is extremely stupid. This is public safety. Like, we're within a year of a similar storm hitting Buffalo and 47 people died in traffic accidents. Like, what are we really, what's the real priority here? I need to be entertained on a Sunday morning. Okay. But no, so I think it was a good decision by the league and the city and the state to push this to Monday. And a hilarious subplot, the NFL stole Christmas from the NBA by putting Niners Ravens on Christmas Day, and now they have stolen MLK Day from the NBA by putting a doubleheader on Monday. Which it's going to be fun watching football tomorrow, in addition to the incredible slate of NBA games. But this number is too big still. I think Steelers are a bet, even with the kind of less likelihood that they're going to be playing in a blizzard. The matchup advantage that exists for the Steelers running offense is still real, and I think if anything, what we saw against the Bengals last year in the playoffs for the Bills is still very much in the back of my head, which is, if the footing's not great out there, if this is slick conditions because you have had feet of snow and or it's still snowing and or it's just cold and icy, if you can be the more physical team and win in the trenches, then you have a realistic chance to win this game, and that's, I think, the Steelers' avenue to pulling off the impossible. So don't know if it's ultimately realistic that they can win, but I definitely think 10 points is too much, and hopefully we do see a little bit more kind of opportunity for the quarterbacks to flex if this is a less windy game. But I mean, I'm not really interested or willing to get off of my Steelers position on this one. Where are you at?
Yeah, I think one interesting thing with the Steelers is that when they were at their low point, which is probably that Colts game, that Island game on the Saturday, where Gardner Minshew with no Michael Pittman just completely lit them up, and then Trubisky couldn't do anything on the other side. The thing in that game, and for a little stretch, is that they didn't have any safeties for a while. And now all of a sudden, Minka Fitzpatrick is going to play, which is significant. He's one of the best safeties in the league. Patrick Peterson has been converted to safety, which was it was out of necessity because they had no one left. But that's probably a good thing, as he probably should have been headed in that direction anyway, given that I don't think he was really able physically and where he's at in his career now to play as a boundary corner and be lining up against Stephon Diggs. So that will definitely help. Obviously, that doesn't necessarily offset the loss of TJ Watt. So, and the other thing too is that the Steelers, since they've gotten Cam Hayward back, they are a really good run defense. So, as someone who is more heavily invested in Buffalo to go all the way than any other team, I am just kind of picturing what Mike McCarthy did today in just running on 2nd and 10, establishing the run to no ends, and then only letting Josh off the chain when past the optimal point. So I think the 10 is a little bit much. I think that the fact that conditions are going to be better has to favor Buffalo, given that bad conditions, I mean, really across all sports, are generally just neutralize the better team's advantage for the most part. So I agree. I think that Steelers cover +10, but I think that Buffalo shouldn't ultimately have too much trouble actually winning the game and moving on. Okay. All right, let's go straight into Eagles-Bucs, the second game on tap. Eagles -3. Total 43 flat. AJ Brown is out. Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts, they will play. Baker Mayfield listed questionable, but he's going to go almost certainly. What's your read on this one?
So I have Tampa money line. I don't understand why the market is still determined to bet Philly here. AJ Brown matters a lot. He matters a lot. And this Philly defense, congratulations, Slay may play, but this is still a broken defense that is coordinated by Matt Patricia. I don't understand it. Tampa has extra rest here to get Baker Mayfield right. I'm hopeful that he is capable of running this offense effectively. And total down to 43, I agree with. But the fact that you can still get threes is insane to me. I think Tampa Bay wins, and I think Philly has a lot of questions to answer this offseason.
Yeah, my concern with the Tampa optimism is that unfortunately I've watched Tampa Bay play the past 2 weeks, and they have not played well at all. And it's not just the fact that Baker was, he's injured and hobbling around against Carolina and they couldn't do anything deep. And then they played really conservatively because they had Bryce Young on the other side and they were managing a lead. And it was a game they had to win. But what's more concerning to me is what happened in the first 3 quarters of the Saints game, where, that game was to clinch the NFC South, and they couldn't do anything. And it was kind of a disaster. So I'm a little bit worried about that, the form that they're taking into this. A little worried as well about Baker, who was frankly awful. He was kind of semi-heroic and gutted it out against Carolina, but he couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure between the ribs, which took some massive hits against the Panthers as well, and his ankle where he's hobbling around. I'm not sure what state that is going to get him in. I also wonder with the Eagles whether they just kind of let go of the rope a little bit, where it was just so deflating, the stretch they were in. And then the Giants game, I think, is just a write-off. I wouldn't read too much into the Giants game. I would read into the Cardinals game, which was a complete mess. But I still think their offense will be good enough to score on a Tampa defense that is not very good, frankly, and has really struggled against the pass in particular. But AJ Brown out is huge. So I think 3 is at 3 flat. I would lean Tampa still just because of this Eagles defense, but I'm not super enthused. I don't think I'm as enthusiastic as most are about the Bucs in this one. Just having seen them play, which has been a problem.
Jay, do you remember where you were on November 20th? Because that's the last game the Eagles covered. It has been a long time since this team performed well, and I don't know. Maybe it happens, but they have the pedigree of going to the Super Bowl last year, so I don't doubt them being able to find that level again. But I certainly think that the market should be closer to a pick 'em, and the fact that you can still get points on the better, potentially the healthier team, potentially the team that is more functional, the team that we've seen play better in the month of December. There's a lot of reasons I think that Tampa could be, could be the effective, more effective offense and the better defense here. So we'll see. Honestly, the fact that AJ Brown is out is that's all I needed.
Yep, no, that's fair. And I think this is the type of game where you'd really benefit from just seeing the first two plays and what Baker Mayfield looks like. Because if he's unleashing deep balls in stride straight away, then 231.5 is too low for a passing prop against this Eagles defense. Anyway, good luck to you.
Agreed.
All right.
Agreed.
All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you tomorrow.